And we are live. Hello and welcome to another episode of our Tuesday live sessions. And today is our Stormwater School session. We haven't done one of these for quite a few weeks. We've had people off and people up and down in Scotland and in Banbury. I think the last one, Lisa, you were down here with us.
I was. It was very different to do it on the couch beside you. But yeah, back to my roots today, back home. So back to doing it online.
Perfect. And how do you prefer it being online, or do you prefer being on the couch in Banbury?
Well, getting close to you is always a pleasure, Callum, of course, but it is nice to be home rather than travelling.
You don't rely on camera, Lisa. You can't tell the truth.
No, it's good to be home for sure. Been travelling a lot recently.
Yes, you have been. You've been up and down a fair few times. You've had a new starter, haven't you, a couple of weeks ago, join the Stormwater team?
Yep, that's right. So we're growing all the time. So more people to add, more stormwater jobs to win. So yeah, new staff.
Perfect. Well, we'll get into today's then, shall we? So the main topic for today's Stormwater School session is why is an attenuation tank required on all UK developments? As part of different legislations and SUDs, there's different laws and regulations that dictate why an attenuation tank is needed. But Lisa, you can go, or you know more about this than I do, so I'll let you go into more detail about this.
Well, the statement is kind of accurate, if that makes sense, but not quite. I mean, certainly an attenuation plan or a flood risk assessment plan is required for every single site in the UK, but not necessarily a crate attenuation system.
Mm-hmm.
As we've discussed before, there's loads and loads of different attenuation methods, like large diameter pipe systems, swales, ponds, these kind of things. And so, yes, every new development in the UK must have carried out some kind of flood risk assessment. Usually involves your local authority, water board authority, building warrants. There is 4 different kind of regulations between Scotland, England, Ireland and Wales as well. So it's very bespoke to where you are. But these risk assessments are carried out at the start of any, development process, and some kind of flood mitigation or SUDS plan, as we've mentioned before, sustainable urban drainage system is required as part of any development. Now, the most common solution, first as part of the SUDS water quantity element, does tend to be a crate attenuation system because they are obviously really, really affordable to install. The other benefits we've discussed, things like they don't, you can develop over them, the car parks and things. They are quicker to put in than a lot of these other methods. So crate attenuation systems are certainly the most common solution to, for a development, but they're not, it doesn't need to be a crate attenuation system. It can be these other methods, but tends to be crate attenuation system is by far the one that's the most common. And so the question of why you need that is because any new development is going to create a quantity of stormwater, surface water, that wouldn't have been there if land wasn't previously developed on. That ground will lose the ability to retain water. It won't, put water back into the groundwater, deplete groundwater levels, these kind of things. So some kind of drainage plan and flood mitigation plan is required. And an attenuation tank forms an element of that. But it's one element in a much larger drainage plan. But lots and lots of different authorities. Again, there's no one answer because depending where you are in the UK, even your water boards and your local environmental agencies, everybody's involved in this plan. There's a lot of consultation you need to do before you can start to build anything, to be honest, at the minute.
And when you mentioned about the different types of attenuation tanks, obviously we specialise here in crates, but what other methods could people choose for attenuation purposes?
So there's the underground tank systems that are formed of large diameter pipes. They are good for deeper installations, certainly, and you can do things like man entry, but they do take up more area, more space. Just with obviously the circular design of pipe means that a larger surface area would be required to hold the same volume of water. Certainly, there's things like ponds, attenuation ponds, which was kind of the more traditional solution, and you still do see them. Obviously form a large, overground lake, essentially, that will fill as required. The main thing of that is, again, you lose the ability to use that ground for anything else. There can also be a bit of a danger element and things like that on housing schemes, so they should obviously be properly fenced off. But you know, they do create a kind of feature, I suppose, but you know, they're certainly less common now than an underground system that has additional benefits. There is other types of system, things like rain gardens, which obviously wouldn't use the whole volume of an attenuation tank, but they can certainly reduce the size of your attenuation tank if you try and reuse some of this water through evapotranspiration and plants and things like that, creating things like rain gardens, tree pits and things like that on your scheme, which will all reuse some of the water essentially before it needs to reach the attenuation tank. Swales, there's absolutely loads and loads of different methods now, all about creating as well as dealing with the water quality, dealing with the quantity rather, also dealing with like the amenity of the site, the biodiversity of the site. So all these things should be taken into account. But certainly almost every site in the UK will need some kind of attenuation, even trying to reuse all of the as much water and return as much water using these other methods. Developments they're large, and you know, and also there's the element, you know, if it's raining onto a developed site where it was previously undeveloped, it's also about the cleanliness. The water's going to pick up carbons, petrols, fuels, silt, these kind of things. So all that has to be tried and removed before it gets to the attenuation tank. But most developments will not be able to cope with the water that's created, the extra surface water, through all these other methods alone. You can try and reduce the size of your attenuation tank as much as possible by putting these things in first. But some kind of attenuation system will almost certainly be required in a development. And out of those developments, the majority of them use cellular crates. Not always, so it's not, but you must have some plan to deal with that water. But cellular crates tends to be the most easily accessible, cheap, quick method.
Perfect. I think you've summarized that all well and gone into a lot of detail about why attenuation tanks tend to be required on most developments in the UK and the different methods that they could use for attenuation purposes. So now I believe is time for the project recap for today's live session, and we've got a collection of different recent projects that our engineers have installed over the past few weeks. So we should have some images coming up on the screen now for you to see, and Lisa will run through the recent projects that we've done.
So this one, Concorth Aberdeen, was a fantastic project. It was part of Aberdeen City Council. Have got quite a detailed plan to put in a lot of affordable social housing over the next few years. They're developing multiple sites across Aberdeen, of which we've been involved in most of them. So we're quite chuffed with that. It's the main package been awarded to a developer who's used as a ground worker and developer who's used as a few times, and they really like your system. So this particular one was EcoBlock Max. Large tanks. I think the total development was over 1,600 metre cubed. And they installed 3 tanks separately over, to work with the contractor, and work with their programme, basically. You can see some were odd shaped, as you can see here, like an L-shaped tank. It was just another really, really prestigious project. This is certainly the largest of the houses. I think there's something like 7 sites that have been developed by Aberdeen City Council solely for affordable housing. And this was certainly the largest one of them, with the 1,600 metre cubed attenuation tank. And it's all done in EcoBlock Max. So yeah, a very, very nice project, and very pleased that the customer keeps returning to us, basically, and keeps putting us in. So that's great. It's testament to the guys on site and the quality of their work. So
good. And then the next one we have is St John's Road, I believe. Yes.
Yep. So again, this is more houses being built in Tunbridge Wells. It was an old bus depot which was demolished to put in special accommodation for older people. It's sheltered accommodation. It's specifically designed for older residents. So a nice EcoBlock Max tank, this time though with inspection. You can see there's an integrated access shaft there, and there was inspection rows kind of running across the tank. Another odd shaped tank, which it takes a little bit of extra time and skill to put in to make sure those corners are sealed. So a very, very nice job. It was 85 metre cubed in total. Again, heavy duty. So yeah, will be fine for cars, bin lorries, etc. coming over the tank. you know, because the bin stores are actually located quite close to the tank. So that was another consideration, that we had to make sure that bin vehicles and everything could, you know, could support the tank, could support them basically. So yeah, nice heavy duty system with inspection.
Perfect. Then the next one we have is Castle Bromwich.
So this is a project for some industrial units. It's 155 metres cubed. It was particularly interesting because the water quality element was being combined with the tank in this instance. As I said, often we have people looking at the water quality before it reaches the tank with various methods, but this one, the water quality element was being integrated within the tank with a gravel trench, which will pick up carbons and nasties and everything as the water passes through with a perforated pipe. So it was quite a complex install, involved quite a bit of coordination on site with the guys, you know, the guys working on site, the ground workers and our team, to make sure we're doing it all quickly and efficiently. We had to put the crates in, they had to put the pipe in, the gravel, and then we would seal it up. We got a visitor as well, as you can see, who was very interested in everything that was going on, keeping a close eye on it.
That's one way to weight the textile down before we and especially when we're installing attenuation tanks, we have to bring membranes up on the sides. If we could just have a few statues lie down on the way there, make the job
I just
lot
think it can't even be comfortable, but there you go. It seems to be absolutely fine. But they're not, you know, they're not soft things, those crates, but you seem to be enjoying yourself anyway. And this is another one in Aberdeen. This is part of the kind of similar project as the one before, another more housing being built in Aberdeen. This is a different ground worker actually. This one again, another long-standing customer who has used this before, 81 metres cubed for 35 new homes. But again, it's more social housing being done. A project called Kingsgate in Aberdeen. And again, EcoBlock Max heavy duty. It's kind of it's the crate that we sell the most often. But it's a really fantastic all-round system, which fit the bill for this one. So very nice project. And again, Aberdeen seems to be, there's so much development and work happening in Aberdeen at the minute. It's crazy. It feels like the guys are up there every week. But it's fantastic that we're involved in so much of it.
Perfect. So, and that's it for the project recap. I think that's all the projects we wanted to show you guys today. Some interesting projects, and like Lisa said, there has been a common repeating. What's one? This does seem to be a regular occurrence that our installers up in Aberdeen recently. So there seems to be a lot of developments going on, and that seems to be especially in the project recap. So we'll have one or two projects that we'd like to highlight up in Aberdeen and in Scotland itself. So now it's time for the to answer any questions that have come in during today's live stream. So we should have them coming up on the screen now. So how do soakway crates work is the first question.
So they really are simple. They work basically by creating an underground reservoir. As we've mentioned, you know, the stormwater you don't want to pull up on the surface. It needs time to dissipate, as it would if it fell in a natural landscape. It would have time to soak through, you know, as required. So they work by you obviously build the crates into the volume that's been calculated by your engineer based on the the rainfall and stuff of the area. And so you build this underground reservoir and surround it in a permeable textile material. It's permeable, but it's also thick enough that the water will hold. It won't just, it's not so thin that it will just instantly, go right through. The water will build up in the crates and be stored there and be let out, basically, permeate through that textile at a controlled rate and, filter back into the ground. So, I mean, it really is as simple as that. There's nothing complicated about it. The textile will just let the water seep through a kind of slow rate and return back, basically replenish groundwater, return back to the earth. So that's that.
Perfect. That's that one. Then the next question we have coming in is, how far does a soakway need to be from a building or house?
The minimum guidance, in fact, regulation is 5 metres. Otherwise, soakaway, the water is soaking away out the sides and the bottom. It can start to have an impact on things like building foundations. You don't want, obviously, lots of water soaking in close to your building foundations for obvious reasons. Attenuation tanks don't have that same regulation because the water is held. Nothing is leaving the tank through the sides or impacting the buildings. The attenuation tanks can be right beside the building, underneath the building. But the soakaways must be 5 metres away so as not to, interfere with any foundations.
And I'm correct in thinking when it comes to attenuation tanks, there can't be any loading from the house potentially affecting the tank when it's installed.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, you've got to think about it as a 45-degree angle. Yes, it says we have. I think we've discussed at previous sessions how they can be under car parts and things, but absolutely no bearing correctly, as you said, from the building can make its way onto the tank. There can't be any support pillars or anything, and any foundations. If you think about, draw an imaginary 45-degree line, that cannot cross the tank at any point from a foundation. And that's also the same for a soakaway as well, like the 5 metre rule. It's 5 metres for the water, but also just in terms of loading impact on the crates, 45-degree angle from the foundation to make sure there's no weight from the building impacting the crate.
Perfect. And then the next question we have is, can an attenuation tank become blocked over time?
It can if the regular maintenance plan isn't followed out. I mean, obviously, the bigger the tank, the longer it would take potentially to become blocked. Smaller tanks can get blocked quite easily, but the most important thing is regular maintenance. Now, that can just be in the form of a really good silt trap, but you can't just put it in and forget about it. The silt trap needs to be emptied regularly, usually by some building maintenance company or whoever's been taking on the maintenance of the drainage. And after any big storm event, so just making sure the silt trap is free of debris. Obviously, the tanks can be designed, which is ideal with an inspection, roll through and a jetting roll, which can really, really help maintain the tanks and make sure that any silt that does make its way in can be flushed through. But yes, they can potentially come blocked if regular maintenance isn't carried out. But that's kind of the same for most attenuation systems, to be honest. Whatever method you use, whether it be large diameter pipes, these kind of things as well, it's very, very important to follow the manufacturer's recommended maintenance guidance.
Perfect. And then the next question we have come in is, does an attenuation tank require a pump to discharge the water from it?
Generally, they're designed to be used via gravity. That is, pumps inside attenuation tanks, should really be avoided, and they're just not a good idea. Most attenuation tanks are designed to be used by gravity. Certainly, as we spoke about basement attenuation tanks and things, there may be a requirement to pump water, but the attenuation tank should still be designed that the water leaves the attenuation tank itself via gravity, and then it can go to a pump station. So you can install your tank at a very slight angle so that the water will leave the tank itself via gravity, but that can go to a pump station, which can then pump the water upwards or distance, whatever you require. But there shouldn't be a pump itself within the attenuation tank unless it cannot be avoided. And really, it's just not a good idea. So things like with the silt, the debris, it's better to just not have a pump within the attenuation. So mostly they're designed on gravity.
Perfect. That answers that. And I think that's it for today's session. I think that's all the questions that have come in during today's session of Stormwater School. It's been good. We haven't done it in a few weeks, but we'll be back again in a few weeks' time for another session. So thank you, Lisa, for your time today.
No problem. Thank you very much. It's been great. So hope you're well. Thank you.
Perfect. And that's it for today's live session. We'll be back next week for another session, I believe, of rainwater research. So make sure you tune in for that one and come back for that. And we'll have David back in the hot seat for that one. But like we said earlier, thank you for your time today, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.